It's time to talk about Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world. And now, here's Ira.
Anything you want us to be, bring us your fantasy, LV.
One Lewis is good, two are great, but three is perfect. And you'll see why in a moment, as my guest is jazz trumpeter, vocalist, and composer Jumaane Smith, performing in Myron's at the Smith Center this Saturday, April 15th at 6 and 8:30, as he celebrates the origins of jump blues and jazz in, ready? Lewis. He'll be performing renditions of timeless classics from Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima, and of course, Louis Jordan, along with music he composed especially for the show. For ticket information, go to thesmithcenter.com. And for everything about Jumaane Smith, go to JumaaneSmith.com, and you can follow him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Jumaane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
When did you first meet the trumpet?
I first met the trumpet a long time ago. I'm afraid to say how many years. But when I was in fourth grade, a person came to my school to show us some different instruments, and I was just really taken by the French horn, and I wanted to play the French horn. And I asked the teachers if I could play the French horn, and they didn't know how to teach the French horn and didn't have one available. So they stuck me with the trumpet, and then it sort of stuck. But when I was growing up, I sort of went through some really challenging and traumatic times in my earlier years, and music was like a big release for me, and it was like a source of inspiration and a source of uplifting me out of those trials and tribulations. And so it became a really special component in my life.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington.
Because I tried to find where I just had trouble finding where you were growing up. I didn't think you were incognito, but I just didn't
No.
see it there. But, so you grew up in Seattle, and then when did you know this was the instrument for you, since you obviously could not do the French horn?
I developed a connection with the instrument really quickly through those trials and tribulations and the trauma I was going through. And I started to see some positive feedback really quickly as well, which helped me. It was like one of the only things that I felt like was really positive in my life at that time. And when I went to high school, I got into this really good jazz program. In Seattle, when I was growing up, there was like a large community of aspiring young jazz musicians, and it was a really special environment to be in. I didn't really realize how special it was until I moved to New York at 18 to go to college and met many of my peers who were one of only a few in their community, only a few in their community who wanted to be jazz musicians. See, when I was growing up, there were hundreds of us, and we used to hang out all the time. We would go to festivals together, we would practice together, and just learn the music. And it was just a normal thing. And so from that time, I was really inspired. And when we would go to these festivals, I was always really good at sneaking backstage and stuff. So I'd get to go meet the artists. And, it was amazing. I have a picture. I met Herbie Hancock when I was like 14,
Nice.
Oscar Peterson. It was wild being able to be around these people whose music I idolized. And so that really inspired me from the start. And then I got to go to a festival in New York City called the Essentially Ellington Festival that Wynton Marsalis had put together. And when I got there, he was like really warm and inviting to me, and he brought me in, and he was just amazing, from the start, and it was so inspirational. And he was like, "You need to move to New York City, and you should come out to New York City to be a musician." And I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. So at 18, I packed up and moved across the country and because I was a part of that large community, when I got to New York, I already knew a lot of people there. And and I went to college. I went to the new school for a year. Well, Winton was developing a program at Juilliard at the time. And the following year, I got accepted on a full scholarship to go to Juilliard to be a part of the first class of jazz studies at Juilliard. And so I was there for 4 years, and it was an amazing learning experience. I still to this day, I don't think I've been surrounded by people so dedicated to the craft and intensely focused on pushing forward and developing. So that was really amazing being there at that time. And then the network that I built at that time led me to an opportunity to do a recording session with this young up and coming singer, um, who had his first single coming up the charts, and the single was "Home," and the singer is Michael Bublé. And so I that was 18 years ago this month,
Amazing.
actually, and
Amazing.
I've been working with them ever since. So it's been an extraordinary ride, and that was a really amazing thing. And along the way, I've done a lot of other things with other great artists like Quincy Jones and Stevie Wonder and Harry Connick Jr. and a lot of stuff as a sideman. And I've always had my own projects that I do as well. And I've increasingly wanted to pursue those more and more. And I'm excited to be able to present my show at the Smith Center for the first time. Uh, and I'm just tremendously excited about that.
I think too that you'll be back as well because it, I think you give off a sense of fun, enjoyment, dedication to the craft, as you mentioned earlier, and a comfortableness again with playing for an audience. There's just something about the way you come across, as opposed to other musicians who I've seen play or sing. Sometimes there's a slight tension, which could be nerves or whatever it is. But you seem, again, to repeat myself, you seem so much in your element when you're performing. And I know that takes time to develop over years, but clearly you started out, as you said, with trauma and turmoil. And I'm fine with you not even going into detail about the fact that you surmounted that and got into a very positive vibe with music and doing as well as you're doing, performing, as you mentioned, with Michael Bublé and others as well. You also performed for Connick Jr., if I remember correctly, Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
so
I
when,
spent 2 years on a TV show.
yeah, so you're all over the place and you're doing well. When you are playing, and again, this is the perception from the audience, but from your perception, when you're playing or you're singing, because you do both, when you're doing that, are you in another realm? Are you in another world? Are you in your groove, so to
Oh,
speak?
absolutely. I feel like when I'm on stage, I'm just a vessel for the music to pass through me, if that makes any sense.
Sure, it does. Yeah.
And it's just I think going through all that stuff and having music be there for me has made me want to share my love for music and what love music has brought into my life with everybody else, and to be in a moment together when I'm on stage and we're all in the room together. It's a shared moment, it's a shared experience, and it's a great opportunity for us all to be swept away by the music and the excitement of the evening and the music.
You unapologetically play and sing many songs from the Great American Songbook, which finds a natural home in jazz. How did you develop an interest in that kind of music?
Well, I think it was when I was growing up in Seattle, and I started playing in bands. My very first gig was actually in a mariachi band. I don't even have Latin heritage at all, but I don't know. Maybe they looked at me and said, "Oh, well, he looks close enough, so he'll pass." But it was just such a large community of aspiring musicians that I had the opportunity to hear it's many different styles of music growing up, and the opportunity to try out different things, and that was one that just really I gravitated towards because of the freedom in the music. And the one of the most interesting things about it for me is the improvisation, because it's like you're having a conversation live with the other musicians on stage in another language, essentially, and that language is jazz, that language is music. And the conversation can get really hot and heated, it can get really intense, and it can get humorous sometimes, and it can get sad at other times, and it's so amazing because it's happening in real time. And the music is it's just very special. I don't think there's any other art form where that type of improvisation over a form is as prevalent. So I don't know. It's something about it just caught me. And then I started learning the lineage and the history and the songs. The Great American Songbook being a huge part of that. And I fell in love with many of the songs and the sentiment of the songs too. Many of the things that those songs speak of are things that we still speak of today, things that are just as true today as they were when they were written. But I also write songs in my own, and in my show you'll see some of my original music as well, which I'm excited to present for you as well.
It's a nice mix. Your debut album was I Only Have Eyes for You, and then it was followed by When You're Smiling, Harvest Moon, Jumaane on Broadway, among others. Do you have a favorite album
Do I have a favorite album?
of
It's the
yours?
album that I'm just getting ready to make.
Good answer.
I feel like albums are timepieces in a way. They like capture you and your artistry where you're at that specific moment in time. And as an artist, I feel like I'm ever changing and developing and growing. And right now, I'm focused on a new project that I'm getting ready to go into the studio for here in a couple months, and I'm really excited to hopefully bring that music back to the Spitz Center sometime in the next season.
Excellent. Do you want to give us a hint about what you're working on, or is it still confidential at this point?
Well, I mean, I guess I haven't really shared much about it, but it's gonna be bluesy and soulful. It's like a real bluesy soulful band, and it's got a different instrumentation. It's like my band is like a organ trio with the saxophone and everything, and so we have a lot of fun, and we can do a variety of different things, and it really fits my voice well. And it's really a fun band to be doing stuff with now. But with that said, my last band, and the one that I'm still presenting now, was the band that I do the show with Lewis with. And that was a project that's also very close to my heart, which I started. I guess I started that project in 2017, and we recorded my album When You're Smiling in 2018, and it was finally released just before the pandemic. And we had plans to go on tour and all the everything. The whole world shut down, so that changed everything with that. But
Hmm.
it was I love Louis Armstrong and that music, and Louis Prima and Louis Jordan, all of that stuff. It's so much fun, and as a singing trumpet player, it's so inspiring to put my take on those things.
I think you may hear from either relatives or people that knew those people coming up to you after the show. And
Oh, that would be amazing. I
yeah,
hope some of them come out. Yeah.
yeah, I think that may happen. I can't reveal just yet, but I have a feeling that's going to happen. Who's your favorite collaborator? Do you have a collaborator? And if you do, who would that be?
Well, I've had a great run with Michael over the years, Michael
A lot of
Bublé,
years,
and
right?
it's been a joy to be involved with him and his organization for the past 18 years.
Were you surprised that you were there that long?
Of course, I thought it was only going to be like maybe a summer. I was planning to go back to college. I left in what was supposed to be my last semester to go on the road with him for the summer, and and then that got extended, and I took a leave of absence, and I was thinking, well, this it'll probably only last maybe another couple months or so, but instead, I got to be there and be involved with it as it grew from small theaters to these massive arenas and stadiums that we perform in around the world now.
So you've been to Las
And even
Vegas.
more,
You've been to Las
what's
Vegas.
that?
You've been to Las Vegas before then because he's performed in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, I've been to Las Vegas many times performing with Michael. And what was even more exciting about my work with Michael was during the last world tour. um, he right before the tour started, he called me and he was like, "Hey, would you sing a song in my show?" And so he invited me to be a guest artist. And during that entire world tour, I was the only other person to come down stage and sing a song. There was no opener or anything. And so it was an amazing experience as well. I did it in Las Vegas, actually, at the arena there too. And yeah, that was really tremendously cool. The very first time I got to do it was in Dublin, Ireland, at a stadium in front of 75,000 people.
Amazing. That's a lot.
It was wild. It was wild.
Did you have did you have butterflies when you came out to do that? You're comfortable behind the horn, but when you first came out and Michael says, "Listen, I want you to come out and sing," was it a little,
You
not
know,
that you had doubt, but were you nervous?
after all the years of doing it, I'm pretty comfortable on stage, and like, I don't know, I was just more excited than anything. I,
Yeah,
I always approach it from like you know who Michael Phelps is?
yes,
He's like he's a swimmer, right?
correct.
So he has this strategy where you basically do the same thing every day. He's got this routine he does every day, and he does it whether it's a practice or whether it's a meet, and it's always the same thing that he does in his preparation. So he expects the same thing in his performance. And so I sort of approached things in that same way. So I made sure that I was well prepared for the moment. And then when I got into that moment, I felt like I could just enjoy it and just be present there. And it always is tremendously exciting to be able to perform like that.
Michael Phelps is a wise man, and I'm surprised you didn't take up the fact that. Have you tried swimming with your trumpet? That might be an interesting.
Uh, I do like to swim. I mean, it's great for the lungs, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, your show at the Smith Center again. It's April 15th at 6 and 8:30. Why did you decide to focus on Lewis, Lewis, and Lewis? What did each man mean to you?
Well, Louis Armstrong, being a singing trumpet player, and Louis Prima as well, singing trumpet players, a lot of high energy, a lot of excitement in their sounds, both singing and on the horn. And I just love the energy of the band. And Louis Jordan, I love how joyful and playful his lyrics can be, and you know, that music, it speaks to me. The jump blues, the bluesiness and the jazz, the New Orleans sound, the New Orleans melting pot of cultures, and all of that stuff speaks to me, and so that's why I wanted to create an album and a show that was based in that.
I could see that working very well at Myron's because of the room. It's a great setup, and I think you'll enjoy the sound there as well. Just the audio, the way
I'm
they put it together.
I'm so excited to perform there. The room looks gorgeous, and We have a good house. The tickets are selling well, and I'm really excited about it.
When you started to put together this Lewis, and all three, you could do a show on each one of them individually and make it a show, but you're combining the three. When you put it all together, you had to leave certain things out clearly. So how did you decide what songs represented Louis Prima and the other two Lewis's? How did that process work for you?
Well, when I put it together, I didn't want to necessarily copy verbatim their styles. I wanted to approach it in a new way and in a different way. And so I wanted to sort of mix them together. Like when you listen to When You're Smiling, that's sort of a combination of Louis Prima style and Louis Armstrong style together. And the beginning half of it is more Louis Prima, and then the end is more Louis Armstrong from Dinah. And so I sort of meshed those together, and doing things like that was really exciting. I have a version of Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby that I perform, but I changed it up. I changed up the time signature and the feel of it completely, and I sort of mixed that with a little bit of John Coltrane's My Favorite Things.
Nice.
And so, just trying different approaches to things and seeing, consciously and subconsciously how I can approach things in a different and new way, with some historical reference maybe, and sometimes just coming from my heart, just entirely what I'm hearing as an approach to the material.
I think that's a great way to do it because you're not mimicking these greats. You are incorporating these greats in your presentation. It's tribute, but it's not as quote unquote a tribute band. It is really more your interpretation of what you felt from each of these people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
How would you, if someone forced you to describe your music, or you just voluntarily described how would you describe your music? Or is it always
Uh,
evolving? Because you mentioned the timestamp of when you're recording certain albums that reflects who you are at that point. Are you at a point
mhm.
where you are comfortable describing your music, or is it always evolving?
I think that my music is evolving. I think in my Lewis project, I am very influenced by uh, the approaches of Louis Armstrong, Louis Jordan, and Louis Prima. Um, and in my project that I'm developing now, I'm more influenced by people like BB King and Ray Charles and things. So it really depends on the time, and what I'm going through, what's happening in my life, and we've all been through so much during the pandemic, and it was a time for me of deep reflection and it that type of thing will change your approach to just about anything.
It sounds as if you're unafraid to be yourself in this sense that you're not going to model yourself after one type of performer. You're going to perform more as an artist than as a specific type of trumpet player or singer or musician.
Well, I've tried to be other people and tried to do other people's thing, but it doesn't work. At the end of the day, I'm myself, so I have to be comfortable with that and develop who I am and try to be the best me that I can be every day. And as I grow, my music and the depth of my music and the depth of my spirit and soul grows as well.
When you listen to your first album, do you see yourself differently today than when you recorded it, or can you still appreciate it as an artist and as a listener?
I can appreciate it as a timepiece.
Okay,
That's
fair
where I
enough.
was at that moment in time, there's certain aspects of that album that I'm really proud of, and there's certain aspects of that album that if I were to re-record today, I would do differently. But that's just how it works. It's I'm sure if you ask Picasso if there was anything that he would have changed from one of his earlier paintings, later in life, probably because of his experience and the things that had happened to him over that course of time, he might have interpreted that particular piece differently. And I think I don't want to compare myself to Picasso or anything, but I feel like I have a similar approach in that way to music. It's always changing, it's like water.
It's an interesting two people you've referenced, Michael Phelps and Picasso. It's a great, interesting mix of people that you've drawn inspiration from. Do you see yourself becoming a star performer solely, or a craftsman, or both? Because I see you first as a craftsman and then becoming a star performer, but your dedication to craft, at least again, from my perspective, that's where you are. But you're the guest, so you tell me.
Well, I really appreciate that. I've had a great experience as a sideman and as a craftsman, over the years, working with all these tremendous artists. And I've learned a tremendous amount about, being an artist myself from all of them. And in my heart of hearts, I've always desired to be a solo artist as well, and to be a leader. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I want to be doing.
Looking ahead for the next 3 to 5 years, concentrating primarily on performing, recording, or writing new songs, or all three?
I would say all three. I'm planning to release an album, hopefully early 2024, and hopefully I'll be back in Las Vegas performing for you all soon.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guest has been jazz trumpeter, vocalist, and composer Jumaane Smith. He's performing in Myron's at the Smith Center this Saturday, April 15th at 6 and 8:30, as he celebrates the origins of jump blues and jazz. And Louis. He'll be performing renditions of timeless classics, Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima, and Louis Jordan, along with music he composed especially for the show. For ticket information, go to thesmithcenter.com. For everything about Jumaane, go to JumaaneSmith.com, and you can follow him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And Jumaane, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Ira. It was a joy to speak with you.
See you next time.
You've been listening to Talk About Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world.